Hello, everybody. Good to be with you for longer than the non-dual minute series. And someone on YouTube asked me to cut a video on glimpses. And I have 198 videos as of this morning. This will be 199. And as far as I know, I've never cut a video exclusively on glimpses. And they're important, so we're going to do a video on them right now. So what is a glimpse? Fundamentally, a glimpse is a revelation of truth. Now, the funny thing about the truth is that when the truth is revealed, there's no one to reveal it to. So it will feel like the ego will claim that I, Fred, had a glimpse. It was amazing. I knew the truth. But that's a memory. That's not the actual thing itself. Because in an actual glimpse, there's simply no Fred there. Right? There's no character. There's no individual there. The sense of me as an individual is just simply gone. It may be recalled that will be recalled that the individual had a so and so experience. Never going to be true. So this revelation of truth can come in lots of different ways. It can just come as a knowing. I remember one time Betsy and I were carrying a bed upstairs in our old apartment, and all of a sudden I had this just knowing, and it was just there was, I mean, but when I say I'm not talking about Fred, I'm talking about awakeness. Awakeness suddenly knew itself. And I said something to Betsy, and when I finished saying it, I said, and I speak to you now in the voice of God. And she said, oh, I get that completely. So we had a different sort of relationship. But there was no particular hallucinogenics or anything to do with that. I mean, or hallucinations or anything like that to do with that. It was no change in actual perception except for the fact that there was no Fred there. And that's the revelation of truth, is that there's no individual. Because what happens is that awakeness, it's not so much that awakeness comes to know what it is, it's that awakeness comes to see what it's not. That's what a real shot of truth is. Because a real glimpse of truth would not be remembered at all, because it would be, if it were true, then there would be nothing there to present the truth and nothing there to receive it. So it would be a non-event. But these things that feel very much like reality and point to reality are these glimpses. But it's just good to remember that the glimpses are pointers to an underlying reality and not necessarily the reality itself, because it can be misinterpreted. I remember one night when I was in my bedroom upstairs, and I suddenly just started having a wonderful relationship with the bookcase. Just like, I mean, it was great. I mean, I knew it was because it was the conscious knowing of the oneness experience. Now, the funny thing is the one who has the conscious knowing of the oneness experience is oneness. But it will be remembered that Fred had a conscious sense of oneness. It will feel like Fred, and may feel like that Fred merged with oneness. But since there's only oneness, how in the world are you going to merge with it? What's there to merge? But so I'm trying to report both the experience and the truth behind the experience. Another time, and this was in Post Awakening just a little over a year ago, I think. I believe it's the last one of these little experiences that I've had. And I was in a restaurant with Betsy's parents, and I excused myself, went to the restroom. And while I was in the restroom, I looked at my phone, and when I did, I felt there was a sudden loss of place. And there was no floor, no nothing. There was just me, and I was moving like this. And I say there was just me. There was not a me. There was an experience of movement in this direction, which all I can tell you is that somehow there was some little bit of unitness involved because there was a physical movement in contrast to that, which is that because I was looking at the phone and I had both hands, I must have been texting or something, but because I was looking at the phone and I felt like I was moving forward, then I pulled back the same way that a pilot would pull back on the stick, you know, so that I would raise the plane, so to speak. But when I did that, when I raised the plane, what happened was that actually the consciousness that was present snapped away completely and went up to the juncture of the ceiling and the wall. And that's where quote I was up there. And there's no I there, obviously, but there is a sense of, there's a memory. There's no sense of I at that moment at all. But there's a memory of a sense of an I, because that's just the character claiming the experience, which is the experience of what? Which is the experience of the absence of a character. That's what it is that when awakeness comes to realize consciously that there is no Fred, then that's a no Fred experience, but the Fredness, that which is these patterns which are identifiable and repetitive, will come in and claim that experience for their own. So I now have had a glimpse. I think of a glimpse as being something that's under about 5 minutes. And this is an arbitrary division. I have no point. I mean, I have nothing to back me up on this. It's just a Fred story. But I'm saying that because if I'm driving by a neighborhood and I look at the neighborhood like this, I can say, as we're going by, I can say, well, I got a glimpse of the neighborhood. But if we drive a ways and then stop 5 minutes or 10 minutes and look at the neighborhood, then I wouldn't say I had a glimpse of the neighborhood. I would say, yeah, we stopped in the neighborhood for a few minutes, right? So glimpses is just a way to experience a momentary, temporary revelation of truth. It's where awakeness reveals itself to itself. What is the significance behind the glimpse? Well, in and of itself, zero. Okay, it's because these things don't mean anything; they just are. So the seeing of truth in a more truthful form doesn't point to anything. It just is it of itself. See, it doesn't actually use it to point to itself. There's just this. This is just this. So this whole thing is actually could be construed on one level as just being fantasy. It's part of the dream. It's part of the dreaming. But what happens is that in that moment, it's not part of the dreaming because we actually slip out of the dream. Pardon me. That's what happens. We actually slip out of the dream. But when it's claimed, that claiming will occur back in the dream because the one who's claiming it is Fred, and Fred is the dream. I know that we always think of it that this is Fred's dream, or this is Bob's dream, this is Mary's dream. And it's not Mary's dream. Mary is the dream. The very dream is that there's an individual and that you are it and that I'm talking to you, when in fact, there's nothing here to talk to anything other than itself. So this is it talking to it about it in hopefully an entertaining video so that it can have a better idea of itself, which it doesn't need. It does what it does. This unit cuts videos, that unit watches. We can't be doing anything else right now. There's no other possibility available. This is what's supposed to be happening. And how do we know? Supposed to be happening is not really a great term, but we can notice it is what is happening. I say supposed only because that's what we say, is that this shouldn't be happening. And then we say, well, this is supposed to be happening like so-and-so, when in fact there's only this happening right here, right now, as it is. So, but the good news about a glimpse, don't let me just completely rain on your parade. The good news about a glimpse is that it is typically an indication that you are clearing. Now, I'm not talking to an individual when I say you are clearing. I'm talking to awakeness through an individual. That individual is sort of like this individual is sort of like my microphone. That individual is sort of like my speaker. So what I'm doing is we're seeing that there is an absence of character, so that what's left is what? It's this. So, and in the experience of oneness, as the experience of oneness, then this can be construed as manifestation, and usually is. What do you find in the absence of a Fred? Well, just find this. But who is it that finds this? I don't think it's Fred that's found that there's an absence of Fred. That's the way it'll be talked about later, but it's just not true. There's no Fred here. So it means that the patterns, these patterns here, these repetitive, identifiable patterns, will declare that they have seen an absence of repetitive, identifiable patterns, that which is impossible, right? So there's something else on another order happening entirely. But what I'm trying to tell you is that these can be important, because very often there will be a spiritual truth that accompanies these glimpses. It's not the glimpse itself that's actually important, other than, I mean, it's important. It's a nice experience. And it keeps us, motivated and keeping forward as if there was a journey, and there's not. But God Almighty, this is just impossible to talk about. So but glimpses, I can tell you from my own experience, is that I had my first real glimpse in 1992. That was a rare glimpse, and I say that because it was very, very rare, because it was very deep and very clear. And I didn't have another one like it for 14 years. I didn't have many glimpses at all in that next 14 years. Honest to God, I can't even remember one, but there might have been something that happened in there, but it doesn't stick in memory. But when 2006, when I had the quote big awakening, then it turned out that so-called big awakening was exactly the same thing as the glimpse, only longer. And that big awakening event that no one needs, except for the fact that I apparently needed one, because I apparently had one, says a so-called Fred, when there's actually no Fred here. See, the thing is that when the words get very, very sharp, the closer you get to the truth, the more room there is for for wrong interpretation. So when the words are really, really sharp, there's a lot of double talk, and there's no way around it. There's just a lot of double talk, because things are seen simultaneously from the absolute and the relative view. So I can see how I can know how this is going to be heard on the relative plane by those of you who are not awake exactly right now. And I know how this will be received by the absolute that's sitting there eating popcorn watching this video, but is wide awake to the truth of its own nature. Whew. So glimpses are these revelations of truth. They're short term, and they just point toward the larger truth of the fact that, well, you'll have to discover the larger truth for yourself. There's no point in my trying to tell you what it is. I've tried to tell you what it is for years, and it hasn't been successful. I don't think it will be now, but it's more successful than some other interpretations. So you got to love that. What accompanies these glimpses are insights. And what I mean by an insight is that there's no one that has the insight, but it will feel like and be claimed by a Fred that had the insight, by a character, the individual, the so-called individual. There's no individual. I mean, if there's oneness and only oneness, what is it that's having an experience of individuality? Got to be oneness. So an experience of individuality is not the same thing as individuality, any more than the sense of something is the truth of something. So an experience of something is simply a sense of something. Feels like it's occurring, we report that it's occurred, and nothing has ever happened. God, I was going to try to make this thing helpful, and it just feels less and less helpful as I go. So let me say that the insights into the nature of your own being, which is the nature of the, quote, universe, so-called universe, which is the nature of the universe, and is the nature of truth, will be seen very often, but will usually be so overcome by the feel-good experience that we completely blow past the revelation. It's the actually revelation part versus what we like is the candy part. Screw the revelation, right? So, oh, this feels good. I know this is right, because everything that ever felt good to this unit, it just knew was right. And anything that felt poorly to this unit, it just knew was wrong. But it can't tell the difference between right and wrong. Really, there is no difference, but it tries. But when I say right and wrong in this example, I mean true or untrue. So there is a seeing or a knowing. It's not a seeing by anybody, nor is there anybody that knows it. There's just a knowing of a different order. That, oh, that's how that works. Or, oh, I see. That's completely false. Something along that line. If you begin to have glimpses like I did, if you get lucky, like this unit did, just a lucky unit. There's no enlightened Fred Davis over here. It's a lucky ass unit that's taking all the credit and money for what awakeness is doing through it. See? So, but as this unit, as the personality, as the character, there was the appearance of more and more glimpses. That's what happened. You have one, you have two, you have three. 2006, after the big awakening, then I began to have glimpses very regularly. Well, I already knew the truth. So how can you have a glimpse after you know the truth? Because there's a difference in the magnitude of the experience. For instance, I know exactly who I am and what I am and all of that right now. I mean, I promise you. But that does not exclude an experience that could be had on the relative level. And that experience might be, as it has been before, that I am absolutely in love with my bookcase. Oh my God. Where it feels like I'm almost, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to get weird or kinky, but it's almost like a sexual relationship. And what I mean is that the pleasure can be so intense and so centralized, because, you know, in a sexual experience, instead of this being the center of the universe gets moved down to being this, this little thing right here. And as a result, of that, as you focus it, the intensity grows. I wonder if I'm just helping anybody here. Hell, I've talked long enough on this thing. So a glimpse is a short shot of experience of truth. It is an encouraging factor if you're looking to wake up, and you must be, or you wouldn't be watching this video. Glimpses tend, other than the wild glimpse like I had, which was in 1992, glimpses tend to come in little groups like bananas. And the glimpses, the bananas will get longer. And then what will happen is that they will become more often. And then through this longer and more often, boom, there's a larger spiritual revelation sometimes, not always. There's no such thing as always. There are no rules here. There's no one to make the rules. There's no one to follow the rules, and there are no rules. So having said that, I think it's time to rule me out of here. See ya. Thanks. Bye-bye.